Welcome to AI Now with Oracle, a series where we explore the world of enterprise artificial intelligence and its impact on the way we work. I'm Miranda Nash, head of Oracle's Applied AI office, and in each episode we'll dive deep into the latest trends, breakthroughs, and considerations surrounding AI technology. So whether you're an AI enthusiast, a business leader, or just curious about the future, this series is for you. This week, I'm welcoming Scott Likens, Chief AI Engineer at PwC, to discuss AI for finance and beyond. Before we dive in, just some quick housekeeping notes. Feel free to use whatever platform you're tuning in on to ask all of your burning AI questions or provide your own insights and expertise. We'll do our best to respond to as many of your questions as possible, and who knows, maybe your inquiries or comments will even inspire the next conversation for an upcoming episode. Okay, let's get into it. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Scott Likens. Scott, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So folks know about PwC.
I hope so.
Yes, but they may be less familiar with your role as Chief AI Engineer. That's really interesting. What was it that led PwC to establish that? Why is, do they have the AI imperative?
Yeah, it's a new role, and as we looked at naming our Chief AI Officer, both globally and here in the U.S., well, we felt like there was this deeper engineering and research and development aspect, and I'm honored to take that role. For us, it's about not only the concepts and the theory, but in practice, what is the engineering that we need to not only change our business, but change our clients' businesses. So the Chief AI Engineer owns everything from research and development, the cutting edge of what's happening in this crazy market.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, it seems to be changing by the minute. And then the actual engineering, bringing it to life, the applied research into what we're doing as the business ourselves or what we're doing with clients. So I'm very honored and excited.
Well, we're glad to have you here. So again, many folks, I know PwC is very broad and diverse, but many folks think of the finance aspects of PwC. And tell us more about, one of the things we see is, or at least we think, finance teams tend to be slower to adopt or slower to move. They're more conservative. But what challenges do they face? Why do we have that perception?
So at the core of our business, 170 plus years old, has been, the finance aspects of attesting and assuring and tax implications. And as we started to look at big opportunities for ourselves, one of the main challenges, and I'll zoom out, last year, ironically, regulated businesses actually moved faster than unregulated in the sense of AI because of the overhead and the amount of work we spend in things like compliance, the amount of information that we have, whether it's in finance or ops or more broadly, looking at the organization. So we looked at it as an amazing opportunity. It's a core of our business. It's the core of what we do for our clients. So we actually doubled down in the sense of what we could do in finance. So I think the data exists. There's well-known regulation. Sometimes that makes it harder, but it also means there's opportunities. And just complying with the ever-changing landscape of regulation means there's a lot of human effort. So if there's a lot of human effort, there's a lot of data, that's where AI thrives. So I think there's amazing opportunities, in finance, let alone across the organization within the enterprise.
Sure. Really, you're pointing at the existing discipline, and the discipline actually helps to adoption and to innovate and go faster. And certainly that's something we've seen here at Oracle as well in adopting our own finance AI and being able to close the books really fast.
Right.
I'm wondering about, at PwC, obviously finance being the core of what you do. What are some examples? Are you adopting AI in your own practices?
We are. We think of ourselves as client zero. I like to say drink our own champagne. So, the really good things we're doing, we'll take out of research and we'll look for the patterns that make sense. In the era of GenAI, that doesn't solve all of the issues we have. It's very specific patterns, right? So if we think about finance, there's the wave of efficiencies. Our people, our human brains can now access lots more data. To your point, maybe we can close faster because the AI is going to give us this power to look more broadly, look for better anomaly detection. Good old AI, not Gen AI, but that combination. So I think of it as superpowering our accountants or our tax advisors or our consultants to look at much more data, but then be the human in the loop to reinforce and reason. So we're looking at opportunities across the spectrum. So if I look at internally, as we do an audit, we execute, there's aspects of that quite honestly, humans don't want to do anyway. So let's build an agent, or let's build an AI to help accelerate at a higher quality that aspect. Humans in control, but taking out a lot of that heavy lift. And if you think about the world around us, we're either using an enterprise platform, but a lot of people are still on things like spreadsheets and custom documents. And AI is really good at kind of combining those things. Let's take that structured data and then that unstructured or mildly structured data, and let's put together for the human to make judgment. And we've infused that throughout.
Okay, great. I mean, dealing with the messiness of data, right, is really a sweet spot.
Yes.
You brought it up, agents.
Yes.
So what is an AI agent?
Topic of the year. There's a lot of definitions. I look at agents as it's a concept that's been around for decades. And we've done these through software. But the advent of generative AI means we can make these agents very flexible. They can start to almost think and reason or plan and reason, based on these foundational models. So to me, agents are the ability to decompose some tasks that a human may have been doing, likely going across either some of that messy data or some of the structured data or both, and bringing that to life within a workflow. So agents become these little digital workers. And one of our predictions is that maybe you'll double your workforce, but maybe not your headcount, because your people now have this access to digital intelligence. And I think that really was the combination of the large language models with good old AI and doing that the right way, so that agentic architecture starts to plug in all throughout your organization.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're basically calling the last generation of chatbots the early version of agents. And we're kind of thinking that LLMs being at the center with the reasoning capabilities, the function calling, the autonomous action is really kind of where we're going with agents. Are you?
Yeah, you're starting to see that being built not only into the foundational models, but in the agentic architecture. So the ability to orchestrate multiple tasks. So it's, the last year or so has been efficiencies. One task, it's faster, it's better, we like that. But the real transformation is long running processes, taking out chunks of that, rethinking processes. Can we close differently? Because AI might skip some steps in a good way and get to a better answer. And now we shrink the time frame even more. So I think agents are that combination of again, humans in control, orchestrating, but really rapidly reasoning and thinking in areas that, again, humans sometimes don't want to do, or they don't do it well. It's just an area that humans can't do.
All the data processing
That's right.
involved,
the massive amounts of data, more and more every day, as you know.
Yeah.
It's not going to stop.
Any specific examples with agents in finance? We heard some of the good old AI examples for finance already. I
think one that I like is really thinking through this. Something we're doing ourselves is, can we build agents to help us with that regulation to controls and compliance, which is a very manual task. We're reading a regulation, which, let's be honest, sometimes are hard to understand, but it's natural language. Can we then take an agent to go through that regulation and look at the controls we have in place and figure out, are we covered? If we're not, what do we need to add? And then even going down in the technology, can we actually build the code and deploy it in a way that's almost autonomous? And we're starting to see a lot of interesting ways to basically de-risk, right? It's going to help protect our enterprise, your enterprise, whoever, because these agents are going to help translate that really long process with many people involved, from lawyers to technologists. Agents can start to bridge some of that gap. So that's an area that I think, obviously efficiency, but I look at the risk. Can we de-risk things? Can we understand controls and governance better? And that's going to make us all safer.
Yeah, that's pretty meta with a lowercase m, to have the AI doing the governance.
Yeah, it's that expert checking us and saying, are we really putting the right controls in place? Are we deploying that into the technology, into the cloud the right way? And then can we have an agent that's always watching that to say, has something changed, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of amazing things happening.
So you made the argument that finance was well suited to adopt AI and innovation because of the discipline, because of the controls in place, and that actually aids adoption. We're definitely seeing this compounding effect. Customers who are willing to go fast with AI and really get serious have the acceleration, right? Do you see that as well? And how do you talk about that when you've talked to customers?
Yeah, early this year, when I would talk to leadership teams, I'd say waiting is not a good strategy. And I think in the last 2 decades, there's been a good pattern of technology releases, but I think in the last 2 years of AI, it's just been very different. The amount of innovation and invention happening. So you had these hesitations. Do I wait for the best model or the best agent. And I don't think that's really possible right now. So you're seeing some enterprises lean in. And I mentioned some of the regulated industries, they're so familiar with AI in general from an R&D perspective, and depending on the industry, different aspects of AI, they leaned in fast, and you're starting to see them pull away. And we start to try and quantify this. And in one of the areas we saw, products and services to market faster, those leaning in were 30 plus points ahead of those that weren't.
Wow.
And to your point, how long do you wait? The technology continuously changes. So I say waiting's not a great strategy. Lean in. You have to build new muscles in your workforce. How do they use these tools? Where does it work with their tasks, and where does it not? So there's a journey there that I don't think waiting makes sense. And I also say the technology has become much more ubiquitous. You mentioned you're infusing it in all of your products. It's going to be in everything we do. So the access really isn't the issue as much as it was maybe 12 months ago. So what's the excuse? It's hesitation, it's risk, it's being conservative on a strategy. It's not about whether or not this could make an impact. And then picking areas of your business, maybe areas that you rely on someone else to do. Could we bring that in and leverage an AI or an agent to do that? Or areas that are very different than your competitors. Can you move faster, getting to a market, new markets? Those are the areas that you really want to focus on using AI beyond the efficiencies.
Right. Yeah. I've heard you talk as well about a kind of a portfolio approach of some really moonshot kind of strategies, and then some lower risk, get things done quickly. And can you tell us more about how you advise clients in that area?
I'd like to think of the efficiencies are necessary, but they're hard to capture. If I'm writing an email 2 minutes faster, that's not changing the bottom line. But you have to build the skill within the organization. I feel like AI can help every single person and every role at every level in some way. That's a big journey. So start now on those efficiencies, but that's about building that new capability within your workforce, and you'll capture tiny bits of that. But then making some of those bets in area of your business, research and development, product development, lean in and work with the business drivers. What's the hardest problem ahead of them? Let's figure out how AI can really rethink the whole process. Don't automate what we have. Think in a new world where AI can reason and have a chain of thinking to help do that completely different. So I think it's a balance, because not all of those will work, or maybe they don't produce the result you need. You'll still get some of the efficiencies, and over time, you're upskilling the entire workforce to think differently in the era of AI. Everything we're doing, every service we provide, every aspect of our technology internally is being infused with an AI first thinking. Where do we start, and just completely think differently about the process.
Yeah, I relate to that. I mean, we're doing the same thing, absolutely. Infusing some simple concepts like, assisted authoring anywhere you've got text within the applications. And that's maybe not a business-changing activity in any individual example, but it's the compounding effect,
That's
right? And building that muscle, like you said. So, totally relate to that.
The whole organization comes up with it.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about governance, because you were pointing at, governance as really an accelerator in a way. And I'm wondering, as we talk to customers, I don't know if they're asking the right questions in their governance councils. Do you have any advice for those folks?
The challenge is there's not one piece of advice. As I think about where we're at in this journey compared to other maybe technology innovations, I'd say the upside is the term responsible AI, or having a trusted way forward with AI, has been in the beginning of every conversation, which is different. Because I think how fast this phenomenon happened around GenAI, people were worried. And you hear the H word, hallucinations. Can I use it on finance because it's numbers and that's not language? So the early days, there was a lot of conversation. And I'd say, to me, that's positive, because we're thinking from the beginning, trust by design, not afterwards. So that's step one. I say you have to have some strategy, and we're happy to share our framework. There's plenty out there around all of the aspects of being responsible with AI, and I'd say more broadly technology. So infusing that in the beginning as we design these systems, if you get that right, the advantage then is you're not as worried at the endpoint as those that didn't think about it. Then they have to go check, can I trust the output? They have to go check, did it do something I didn't know it would do? Whereas you're building those guardrails in from the beginning. So you again, that advantage is you're ready to go with some new product or service or market much faster than the peers that are just, kind of tinkering and experimenting and not thinking about at the end of the day, especially in finance, the numbers have to be right. They have to follow the regulation and the control and the governance. And AI's helped me do that from the beginning, and you're doing it at the end. I'll take the pattern where I start in the beginning and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, very interesting. One thing I thought was kind of cool, one of our customers is calling their governance council the AI Innovation Council, which really suggests, the mindset of like, okay, we are doing this responsibly, but the intent is to adopt and gain productivities, and it's for the business, right?
I love that. I love that, because governance is sometimes viewed as a kind of a bad, it's heavy, it's slow, it's going to weigh us down, but innovation requires responsibility. And I think tying those things together is really brilliant.
So when we talk about the haves and the have-nots, how would you characterize the haves? Does it follow industry lines or something else? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I think last year was different. I think there was this technical have and have not. There wasn't equal access to the actual large foundational models as a GenAI example. Globally, it's a very diverse set of regulations and access through to those models. I think we were kind of past that. So then it became industry by industry. We saw the regulated industries, financial services, pharmaceuticals, things that had high regulation. They could find an advantage of getting to market faster. So if I can use AI, a lot of the GenAI and good old AI together, to get through medical, legal, regulatory controls reviews faster than my competition, I could get to market. And sometimes those numbers become, massive revenue opportunities. So there was that initial move. And I think now we're pivoting in, as more and more of the companies are leaning in and building these architectures, they're starting to look at the data assets they have that their competitors may not have. Can I pull together an interesting set of data? If AI becomes somewhat commoditized in the sense of large language models and the generative side, I have to have something really unique. And so this data moat becomes really interesting. And the haves are saying, I could get my data together. This is a challenge, and maybe one you all can help with. The data landscape is tough. And for AI to accelerate, we've got to get the right data in place to set it apart from just the commodity answer.
Thanks for the tee up there. Yeah. Yes, that's right. That's a fundamental principle with how we think about the value of AI and having the most important sensitive data all in one place, in a suite, the value of the suite, and then infusing AI, bring it inside as opposed to sending your data over there.
Absolutely. And you're seeing that pivot of sending AI to data. I also think we're in a new data era because of the combination of structured and unstructured. There's all sorts of value in unstructured, and we can now bring those together a little more easily with generative AI and these large models being able to find interesting information throughout both. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the world of data. I think it's tough with regulation, privacy, different regulatory schemes around the world. It is complex, and we're looking at that every day. I want to enable my people with the best of our internal data, which sits all over the world. But every part of that has different regulation, and there's a lot of work to do there. But once that AI has access, wow, the power is obvious.
Yes, yes. And I think you've done some research about product companies in particular, which is interesting. Oracle's a product company. What do you advise to product companies?
So we look a lot around R&D and product development. And I'll say the easy one. Software engineering and everything in IT is being supercharged with generative AI especially. I was a software engineer way back a long time ago, and I always feel like, I can fall back on that. Well, it's changed dramatically. I still think that software engineers are going to be the inventors of these ideas, but the AI and machines are going to actually scale the development in a way that I'm very excited about. So from the kind of the technical layer, there's already the infusion of GenAI to do backlog in a day, GenAI to help write test code, which developers don't like to do anyway, GenAI to help optimize code that we have or are creating, deploying it, the whole putting in security agents to look for security risk, putting in regulatory agents, AIs that are looking for regulatory risk. We're just going to supercharge the ability to create new products. So if a roadmap becomes, 18 or 12 months down to 2 months, think about the opportunity to launch more products, more features in products. So I love that. And then just the R&D around it. I almost can foresee a world where, every application is almost dynamic to me. that an AI agent is reacting to me as a person. I don't need to click buttons anymore. It knows the button I want, and really having this truly dynamic interface with technology. I think that's right ahead of us with agents and AI producing all of that.
I feel that as well. I mean, that was kind of at the core of how Oracle in particular was able to get to market so quickly and really take advantage of all the investment that's happening in the LLMs, the foundational models themselves. And then the applied AI folks are basically just using AI to get faster and deliver more innovation.
So I think it's a superpower. I think, will jobs change? Yes, but we're going to have to still build products.
Another part of the cost of these models is that folks talk about is potentially the sustainability cost or the environmental cost.
Right.
How do you think about that, and what do your clients have concerns around there potentially?
So behind risk, this is probably the other area that we get asked about a lot. And I'm definitely an optimist in the sense of there's no doubt the increased desire and usage of AI has dramatically driven up, the compute behind that. So not only the compute to train a model, but the compute to inference against it. We see the data centers being built, everywhere. But I'm optimistic that because this happens so fast, we're seeing already innovation in many ways. One, how do we generate power for those new data centers in a new way? You're hearing the word nuclear in the US, which is not a word 5 years ago we would have been talking about. Right or wrong, people are thinking about new ways to generate greener power. Big investments in green energy, investments in how we transport it and run those data centers. We're seeing that the data centers and the machines in them are changing. The chips themselves, AI chips are being built to be more power efficient. So while the net use of energy is likely to go up in the short term, I think the innovation that's happening in building the chips and building the data centers and powering them, that's going to be an area of innovation. And again, we're seeing it. And what that's going to translate is all these other industries that just use power already are going to get the advantage of that invention. So if we generate better power for data centers, well, that better power is also going to power automotive and chemical and pharmaceutical and all of these other industries, which are the bulk of the global usage. So we're studying this intently. And again, I'm the optimist. So there's the other side of the coin that says, we're going to double and it's bad for the environment. But then we also look at this in what we call our value flywheel. So if we have a hypothesis of value where GenAI or AI could provide some value, as we go through the solutioning and all of the design, one big piece of that is cost and carbon. Okay. And we have a really detailed way to understand, the actual cost and carbon, because we know the tokens in and tokens out, and we can trace that to where it ran and what data center and how it's powered. So, and you think about scope 1, 2, 3 and ESG and all these reporting, it's actually coming together, I think, in a way that has great transparency. So I believe in the invention and innovation, of course, the transparency and reporting. And if we're all talking about it, we're all thinking about it, and we're doing it in the beginning, not the end, I think it sets us up to make a conscious change, to do the right thing. And while AI will use energy, let's make it better energy, greener energy, and then use AI to solve some of those problems for us. Can we optimize better? Can we create more materials or better chip designs? So I look at the next 5 years as a really amazing time to do this right. It could be done wrong, but I'm an optimist.
That's a nice way to wrap up the serious parts of this conversation. Great. Honestly, on the optimistic note. On the less serious side, I guess, how are you using GenAI in your life? What's going on that's kind of fun or interesting that you can share with others about how it's changing things for you?
Yeah, so I use it professionally all the time, but I'll tell you, I use it personally all the time. I'm a curious person, and I always want to know more about some topic. So obviously the massive intelligence I have access to. I'm really excited about multimodal and the things happening in video and audio. And my team's created a synthetic version of me that can speak 40 languages or more, and I can send that around the world and connect with my teams differently. I'm so passionate about using it day to day. Ironically, I live on a ranch in Texas where I don't have any technology, and I raise cows, goats, chickens, etc. So I like that balance, but I've infused it throughout my day in everything I do, both personally and professionally.
Scott, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in. If you want more updates, musings, and AI news, make sure to subscribe to Oracle's YouTube channel and follow us on social media. See you next time.